What's going on YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here bringing another video. Today I'm bringing you a video on Lupinranger versus Patoranger episode 24. This episode is called Promise to Return Alive, and the episode overall was okay. It did a decent job overall. I'm liking the fact that we do have this trio. You know, one member died last episode. That was Uchibarak. This episode, the focus on Gangler was Giwi, and it's pretty cool. What happens this episode is it starts off with us seeing that there are a bunch of girls who went to this concert. They got great seats. They were to sit all next to each other, and it's only because they had these special pendants that they were wearing. The thing is that the Power Rangers and the Lupinrangers are looking all around to try to figure out a clue about a recent Gangler attack, and this pendant leads to the Lupinrangers knowing exactly what they have to do, and that is their clue, the pendants. So they're traced back to where the girls got it. Where what happens is that Kyrie ends up speaking to the guy in charge of it. He ends up asking about the pendants, hearing about how they're lucky and how they provide extremely good luck. There's even a guy who gets a pendant right before Kyrie does, but then Kyrie asks for one and he does manage to get one. But what does end up happening is that eventually the Power Rangers decide to arrive on the scene, and they decide to uphold the law. Suddenly, one of the guys that's working the record player turns out to be a Portaman, and also the Gangler reveals himself, and that leads to everyone freaking out. So then at that point, what also ends up happening is that Tsukasa recognizes that Kyrie's in the building, and she decides to take him out and, bring him to safety. Once out, what does end up happening is that they have a conversation, and one thing that's brought up immediately is the fact that Kyrie has a brother that was taking care of him and everything, and that Kyrie should go home to him. Thing is that Kyrie's confused as to why, Tsukasa knows this, and she explains the fact that she looked into his information, which is eavesdropping, but she decided to do it anyway, and he brushes it off, basically says it's alright, but that's still invading my privacy. And what happens is that we also end up learning some more backstory on Tsukasa, which is pretty cool. The backstory basically explains how Tsukasa grew up being raised by her grandfather because her father and mother passed away early on. And the thing is that he trained her as a young girl, never gave her any mercy in combat so that she could be as strong as possible and protect herself in life. And the thing is that when she grew up to become a high school student, one day there was someone that attacked her friend. There was like a creepy pervert or whatever. And what happened was that she, responding to her friend, immediately knew that she had to protect her friend and went and beat off the guy, and then he was arrested for attacking the girl. So it's kind of an interesting thing to consider. And what happened was that her grandfather came over, and when he saw this, he was like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you're safe," and it really showed that she was able to protect people and bring peace to a situation. And that leads to her big goal in life, which is to bring peace to the world so that she can live with her grandfather in a peaceful place, because by dealing with the Ganglers, she hopes that will occur. So it's a pretty ambitious goal, but it's a goal that she strives to accomplish. And it is interesting to know that we now know a bigger detail about her backstory. So anyway, what does end up happening is that from here, they end up returning back. Kyrie returns back home. The Ganglers head off. What also ends up happening is that Giwi ends up meeting up with Zamigo and gives him some money, which is interesting. And the thing is that Lyman doesn't really trust Zamigo, so that's kind of an interesting point, and that will be important towards the end of this episode. But what does end up happening is that Giwi does trust Zamigo a fair amount. So the thing is that eventually the next day occurs. We end up seeing that someone gets really lucky. Like, what happens is that they say that my pendants will finally start sowing seeds, and they mean that in a literal sense because these pendants are like leaves. And what happens is that like there's this guy that gets a perfect lottery card, and when he gets it, suddenly these plants come to life out of the pendant, and they actually wrap up the guy, trapping him in place. And suddenly what happens is that the Power Rangers arrive on the scene, and they try to free the person that just got trapped in the plants, but it actually only makes it worse by blasting or ripping at them. And so what happens is that then another person who's just running by, who has the pendant, also ends up in the situation and is like hanging over a railing, and could practically fall over if it weren't for the fact that the plants kept him up. But the thing is that he also gets trapped, and there's several people around the world that are trapped. So then from that point, what does end up happening is that the Lupinrangers do end up tracking Giwi. They end up finding where he is, and so do the Power Rangers. The Power Rangers arrive on the scene after the Lupinrangers and are surprised to see them there. But what does end up happening is that the Lupinrangers and the Power Rangers struggle to fight against Giwi, because Giwi's Lupin collection item is actually it allows him to be very evasive, so he can't be shot. And that's something that's seen in the first battle as well, because the Power Rangers do end up fighting in the first battle. Everyone except for Tsukasa, pretty much. But Noelle is involved and all that. But in this case, what does end up happening in the second battle is that Kairi, knowing that he needs to destroy the Gangler, is willing to risk his life, and he goes in, grabbing a pendant from off of someone, and tries to put it on his neck. He then ends up taking advantage of that. What happens is that Tsukasa takes it off, and then Kairi steals it from Tsukasa, and he ends up using it to get perfect shots or lucky shots at the Gangler, and it does work. Now, what's also interesting is that he even says Yosha Lucky or whatever, the phrase that Lucky from Q Ranger used to say all the time. So it's kind of funny to hear him say that whole phrase. What does end up happening is that eventually Lupin Blue does go in, and he actually unlocks the safe and manages to get out the Lupin collection item, which is the weapon that Tokyo Rokigo used in Tokyuger. So that's pretty cool to see that being the Lupin collection item. Anyway, what does end up happening is that from here, after they manage to do all that, Kajiro ends up using the Good Striker to form Patoranger Ugo, and Noelle also does a finishing attack with Patoranger Ugo to defeat the Gangler. Following this, what we do end up seeing is that Lyman ends up approaching Zamigo, basically saying, "Hey, Zamigo, you should join forces with me." And the thing is that, he doesn't really trust him, but what he ends up saying under his breath is that we don't want the humans to get ahead of us, so I need, even though I don't trust him, I still need something so that the humans don't get ahead of us, basically, meaning that he wants to get on Zamigo's good side because he knows that he's in a pretty bad state, and he's hoping that Zamigo can become a new ally for him, even though in reality he doesn't like him at all. So it's kind of an interesting thing. What does end up happening is that the Power Rangers end up summoning Pat Kaiser, and also Noelle ends up summoning Ex-Emperor Gunner. What does end up happening is that Ex-Emperor Gunner is used, and so is Ex-Emperor Slash, and then eventually they do manage to do a finishing attack which destroys Giwi. Very cool situation, and then the conversation ends between Lyman and Zamigo, and basically what Lyman says is, just think about my offer, and Zamigo's heads off and does his own thing. So then from there, what does end up happening is that when everyone's happy to know that Giwi was destroyed, Lyman is turned big, but when he's turned big, he's not just turned like a little big, no, he's turned way bigger than Pat Kaiser or Ex-Emperor, in either form. So the thing is that at that point, the Gangler ends up swiping his hands at the Power Rangers and also at Pat Kaiser and X Emperor, knocking them over, beating them down pretty hard because he's so much bigger than them. But as far as things go, it's gonna be a very interesting battle to see what happens next episode. In the preview, what we do end up seeing is that the teams will finally work together. The one thing that is supposedly happening is that the Power Rangers won't be learning what the Lupinrangers' identities are yet. I'm hoping in the next few episodes, though, that will actually happen. Like, what I'm kind of expecting is that next episode, we know that Good Cool Kaiser is going to be introduced in the show, which is the combination of the Lupinrangers mechas, the Power Rangers mechas, and also X Emperor, combined into one big mecha. So it's 11 mechas in one, which is very cool. The idea of that. Design wise, not a big fan, but as far as things go in general, that's what's going to be like the end all combination. What's also interesting to note is that the cockpit, from the images we see in the preview, only show it shows Patoranger Ichigo, Lupin Red, and Lupin X. The reason why that's kind of significant is that it represents all three teams, but at the same time they don't have like a 7-piece combination where like all 7 where the 3 Lupinrangers, the 3 Power Rangers, and the one and then X and then Patoranger X or Lupin X are in the cockpit. I'm curious if maybe there'll be an upgrade to Good Striker, or will it always be that there will be a 3-man combination? We'll have to wait and see. I would personally prefer it if the whole team were working together, but again, I do understand why they would maybe stick with the 3-man situation. We'll have to wait and see, though. I personally would like to see a bigger combination situation, just because it's kind of cool to see many characters in a cockpit versus just having the 3, having those 3 or whatever. Which, I mean, I'm sure it could work the same way if Toma does it, if Toma's in a combination, or Umika, or Tsukasa, or Sequoia are inside the mecha combination. It's just, I would like it if all of them were in there. I don't know why they can't just do that, and hopefully there'll be some sort of upgrade to that. As far as things go, again, the identities I'm hoping will be revealed in the next few episodes. Maybe because now, since it seems like they're working together, that maybe in the next episode after that, or the next couple episodes, something will lead to their identities finally being revealed, and they'll have to work together. And they won't just be enemies anymore. You know, they'll be fighting each other alongside each other in battle and just in general. And maybe, and what is known is that apparently the theme song is going to change fairly soon, because what's going to happen is that the two teams will be working together, so they'll have to change the theme. And honestly, it'd be also interesting if they change the name of the opening, the name of the show, because it's Lupinranger versus Power Ranger, but if they're working together, they're not versing each other, they're with each other, so it should be Lupinranger and Power Ranger. Again, we'll have to wait and see what does end up happening. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. I'd love to know your guys' opinions about this episode, and we'll see you guys in the next one. And that's about it for me, guys. So until then, I'm Crazy Samurai 71, and goodbye, guys.